is a video showing how to flash the bootloader firmware for the D8 and D8 Pro. They're exactly the same except for the chip model used in the firmware flashing. So their bootloader firmware flashing videos are combined into one. If you're running into either of the two situations shown, you'll need to flash the BL firmware using Catapult. The USB firmware or USB to CAN bridge isn't flashing successfully. The USB firmware or USB to CAN bridge isn't flashing successfully. His bootloader firmware comes pre-flashed from the factory, so as long as you see the light blinking, you're good to go. Here's an introduction to the firmware. Let's get started with the flashing tutorial. Step 1. Enter flashing mode. The restart button is on the left, and the boot button is on the right. There are two ways to enter flashing mode. With the main board completely powered off, press and hold the boot button, then connect one side of a Type-C cable to the board and the other side to your host. Once the Type-C cable is connected between the board and your host, press and hold the boot button, then briefly press and release the OST button, followed by releasing the boot button. We recommend going with the first method. We'll need to prepare a host, D8 board, 2 Type-C cable. First, let's power up the host. Next, use a USB cable to connect the host to the D8 Type-C port. Before connecting, hold down the boot button. Once the Type-C cable is connected, release the boot button. There are two ways to perform the flashing. We recommend the host flashing, it's much simpler. Next, connect to the host machine via the network. Click Session. Click on and enter the host IP address in the input field. Select Accept. We'll input LS USB to check if it has entered DFU mode. If no DFU device is detected, please go back and retry the steps. After logging in successfully, install the flashing tool. Mellow host don't need to install. The next step is to flash the precompiled firmware. Here I have an error because I had already installed it, and this download is only necessary for the first install. If you have already downloaded the firmware, we recommended to update the firmware before proceeding with the remaining steps. Copy the command, then paste it into the input and press enter. If you're using the D8 Pro, just replace F407 to H7 to 3. File downloaded successfully indicates that the flashing process was successful. After the flashing is completed, it need to completely power off the board once. Double-click the OST button. If the LED flashes, it means the flashing was successful. The flashing was successful, you can now flash the clip or USB firmware or USB to CAN bridge firmware.